皆さんこんにちは。セックスを深く楽しく美しく皆さんと探求している今ここのここです。今日はですね、アメリカからデスティン・ゲレックさんをお招きしました。デスティンさんよろしくお願いします。こんにちは。
こんにちは。
はい、デスティンさんは実は奥さんがね日本人で、そしてなんでね今回お呼びしたかっていうと The Evolved Masculine、進化する男性性っていうのかな、そう後ろにねありますけれども、彼はアメリカ人なんだけれども、世界中でもう本当になんかもっとこう男性が本当の意味での男性らしさっていうのを発揮して、社会でもそしてベッドルームでもっていうのかな、奥さんに対してパートナーに対してもっと本当の意味でこう男性らしさっていうのをこう目覚めさせる時だっていうことを、いろんなところで説いていて、もう何千人もの男性たちに教えを請うている、コーチであり、教育者なんですね。で私この YouTube のチャンネルやっていて、男性の方たくさん見てくださってるんだけども、やっぱりなんかね、もっともっと深いところで男性っていうのはどういうふうになっていったらいいのかっていうのを皆さんこう欲してるなっていうふうに思って、3部作で、3回これからデスティンさんにいろんなお話伺ってみたいと思います。ぜひ皆さん最後まで聞いてしっかり勉強して、デスティに聞きたいことをコメントにも残してもらえたら嬉しいです。じゃあ早速聞いてみますね。まずね、彼がなんでこういうことをしてるのか、ちょっと自分の話を、教えてもらおうかな。So Destin, thank you so much for talking to me and to the Japanese men. I think we all really need this message and just a new awareness to perform better in the world and in the bedroom. Can we start by asking why, like your personal story, why you are doing this kind of work?
Yeah, I grew up in a broken home with a lot of volatility, a lot of intense fighting between my parents.
Mm.
Um, in high school, my girlfriend was raped on her 15th birthday. Just before we met, I ended up being the first person that she told. I was 16 and not equipped to handle it emotionally. Had a major impact on me as well as her, obviously. And we were together for 3 years. And at a certain point, I made a declaration to God, the universe, to myself, most of all, that I would commit my life to creating a world where things like this didn't happen. But in the process, I also internalized a message that men are dangerous and not to be trusted, especially men's sexuality. And this led me to kind of shut down and disconnect from these parts within myself. My masculinity and my sexuality got very distorted. Fast forward 10 years, and my life was a mess. And I ended up declaring 2007, 13 years ago now, to be the year that I would actively explore my masculinity and what it means to me to be a man in the world.
Mm.
It proved to be far more powerful and transformative an exploration than I imagined.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that it ended up becoming the foundation of the work that I bring forward. What I thought initially was just something that I had to face because of my own unusual history, I came to recognize that more and more men in my age bracket and younger particularly are really grappling with what it means to be a man, especially a good man in the 21st century. And how do, especially now over the past several years of the conversations around, sexual trauma, the Me Too movement, toxic masculinity, and the patriarchy, um, how where more men are introspecting on what does it mean to be a man? How do I form a healthy relationship to my masculinity? What are these aspects of the programming that I've received that aren't actually working for women, but actually probably not for me either?
Yeah.
And Yeah, so that's kind of the basis. It's been a long journey, and at this point, I've built a very successful company, an organization called the Evolved Masculine that has served upwards of 1,000 men around the world in I don't know at least 2 or 3 dozen countries, and we work with men around these three areas around what I call the evolved masculine, forming a healthy relationship to the masculinity and what it means to be a man. Also deepening into his confidence and a sense of like purpose or mission, reason for being here. That's the first area. The second area is sexual self-mastery, how he relates to his sexuality, how to be healthier in it, as well as more empowered in his sexual expression. And the third is understanding women and the feminine, both the feminine in women as well as his own internal feminine. How to integrate that in a healthier way, how to understand her and have a healthy relationship.
Great. So let's start from the first one, the evolved masculine. What do you exactly mean by that? We all, I'm sure, get a kind of a sense of it. And when you say confidence and purpose, what is your vision of evolved masculine?
Great question. I can share a link with the video as well of a 10-minute audio transmission that I give around the evolved masculine. That will give it much more in depth. But there are notions around masculine and feminine that have been explored in different ways in different cultures throughout time and throughout the world. And I have spent all this time really trying to pull out what I really view and see as core elements as well as the best of what masculinity can be, while acknowledging and confronting these more like flawed or more toxic elements of masculinity that have arguably really been amplified over the past several generations or more. But I view really, at its core, I've really come to view the difference with the evolved masculine is in his relationship to the feminine.
Wow.
In older, more patriarchal notions of masculinity, the relationship to the feminine is the feminine is to be controlled, it is to be dominated, it is less than, it is weaker. The masculine is the default, it is standard. Feminine is something that you're supposed to snuff out from within yourself. If any hint of is a sign of your weakness as a man. And the evolved masculine, to me, elevates the feminine, embraces the feminine, recognizes that we're in a time period right now where the feminine is rising in its power. And does not fear that rise. He's not afraid that it will somehow weaken him or lessen his position. Rather, he embraces this rise of the feminine and helps encourage and amplify, views its role, especially right now, more than anything, the role of the evolved masculine is to create a world in which women and the feminine in all of its forms feel safe to truly blossom and flourish.
I've been really liking this phrase, vulnerability is the most sexiest. And when I interview women, they all say that. They say that when men really open up, becomes emotional, because in touch with their hearts, and is not afraid to express their feelings, that's when they're most turned on.
So I think it's a little more complex than that.
Okay.
I think that that's a step in the right direction. And what I've seen here in the West anyway, is that we had a generation of men really who have lacking models of what that healthy emotional connection and expression look like.
Yeah.
Instead, kind of veered off balance in that direction, where instead as a man, you can end up becoming ruled by your emotions. It's not just an expression, but there's a loss of a self, loss of connection to one's own power, one's own solidity, one's own groundedness, and just be swirled up in the emotions, which quite frankly, most women are not a fan of, because that's their tendency as it is, and she often looks to and leans on him to be more of that ground to help draw her back into herself.
Sure.
When she's flying off. So if it's just two people flying off, it doesn't help the situation. And I share this honestly via experience, because that was me a decade and change ago. Like me and my ex, I would, anytime she would go into any sort of emotional spin, I would just emotionally spin.
Yeah.
Period. Every time. It did not help. She was not like, thank you for expressing your emotions.
Of course.
So what I learned through this process is that you can learn to. Many men feel like they have to repress and numb themselves to their emotions.
Yep.
Then the other side is basically being ruled by your emotions, the emotions taking over. And somewhere in here, there's this place of learning to be able to feel and hold your emotions. The emotions are a guide. They are communicating something to you. We don't need to cut ourselves off from them. In fact, to me, I view that as a weakness. It is stronger to be able to feel fully and hold your ground.
Yeah. And
honestly, it took me many years to come to that understanding. That is,
and we're not even the women we're not trained at all. And especially, I think, in Japanese culture, like you're saying, when are said, you have to be a certain way, you need to repress your feelings. It's all about performance, achievement, and so no wonder they're lost.
Yeah, it's not easy. The reason why I formulated the evolved masculine is because I came to recognize that a lot of men are lost in this manner. And at least here in the West, a lot of the messaging right now, well, it seems to be split between two. There are those who are really trying to reaffirm old ways of doing things and old ways of being things, both men and women, who are digging in their heels and holding tight to traditional gender roles and a more patriarchal approach.
Yeah.
And then you have over here this major reaction to that, which right now has been a lot of a focus on what men are getting wrong, how they're harming women and others, the pain that they've created, and everything that's wrong with men and masculinity. And I get it. Honestly, it makes sense. Arguably, it's very necessary. It's drawing a line in the sand after a very long time and saying, enough. There are things that we've tolerated that we will no longer fucking tolerate. And however, the conversation can't end there. It's a starting point of a new conversation. And I learned through my own journey at 17 years old of taking this message that men and masculinity and men's sexuality are dangerous, that it creates a different set of problems. And so the evolved masculine to me was about creating a model that men can strive towards, can be inspired by, not just of what not to do, what not to be, but like, yes, like, I want to be more like that. And a model that women, by and large, see and hear, and they're like, yes, that's what we've been wanting. That's what we're asking for. And so a lot of how I came to this, honestly, was a lot of deep listening to women and what's really being asked for and craved for underneath the anger, underneath the complaints. As well as deep listening to men and listening to where the pain, the struggles are that men have in our holding, which quite frankly, prior to 2007 and that active exploration and my starting to work with other men, I didn't understand just how deep and widespread the pain and struggle that so many men hold is. But it's
Wow.
there. It's why we have again, I don't know these numbers as well in Japan, but in the United States, why like rates of suicide amongst men are more than 5 times as high as women.
Wow.
Rates of alcoholism, opiate addiction, they're skyrocketing because men are in pain and there's no real space for men's pain in society.
Yeah. Yeah. So please give the men, the Japanese men, one concrete practice or things that they can do right away. Like you were saying, deep listening. Is that one thing that maybe you can guide them?
Honestly, if I give you one thing, I'd really like to say to download and listen to this, what I call the Evolved Masculine Blueprint. I lay out first a vision of the evolved masculine as I see it, asking you to preferably listen to it on headphones and eyes closed and take it in and really listen. And notice how these different words land for you.
Okay.
But
it's in English.
Fuck. Maybe you could help me make a Japanese version. Because there's a writing prompt at the end that's very useful for men listening, or women for that matter, to explore like what that phrase, what this notion of the evolved masculine would mean to you.
Okay.
And from being able to have that vision, let's put it a different way. Whether we get that to you or not, do some free writing around what would the man that deep in your heart, underneath or beyond any cultural programming, what would that, if you were fully free, without restriction, without fear, without shame, without past mistakes still ruling you, who is the man that you would want to be in the world? And so I believe that allow yourself to dream. I really believe that creating a vision that's extraordinary actually is easier to achieve in many ways than just trying to make little changes around the edges. Because creating these types of changes takes energy, and it's not always going to be easy. You need a vision of possibility for yourself that is so inspiring. It's going to drive you towards action. It's going to put that wind beneath you to move forward even when it's difficult.
Totally, Destin, and yeah, I would love the viewers to do that, but just a really low-level question though. Maybe some men will think, well, I want to look cool like you. Like you look really cool with your tattoo, and you have a great business, and I just want to fuck women. Like what? To these people, what do they? I mean, a lot of men are very insecure. They want material things. They want a beautiful partner. What do you tell to these people?
For one, I want to say be careful that you don't spend your life chasing after something that's never going to bring you fulfillment. I've done those things. and there's a limit. Our societies. I just posted something on my Facebook earlier. I think in a comment actually about how living in Los Angeles, I came to recognize the phrase of not all that glitters is gold. That just because we're tempted with these goals that we're supposed to have And if you just achieve this and have the perfect Instagrammable life, then you'll be happy.
Sure.
Then that pain or struggle that you have inside, then it will go away.
Sure.
And you'll just be, it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Yeah. You're so right. So look
Yeah.
deeper inside you, write free writing, really envision the evolved masculine for yourself. What does it look for yourself? How does it look for yourself?
Who you become will bring you far more satisfaction and fulfillment than anything that you gain, any material items
Sure.
or achievements.
Yeah. OK。じゃあ皆さんぜひともね、今のメッセージを受けて自分がどういう男性に本当になりたいのか、いろいろこう恥だったりとか、こういうふうに思われたらどうしようとか、もうそれは一切横に置いて、ぜひじゃあコメント欄にそれを書いてみてください。デスティンさんね、日本にも来てワークショップをしたりとか、日本の男性の皆さんがもっともっと真の意味でのね、男らしさっていうのを培っていけるように、手助けをしてくれると思うので、まずはそのきっかけ作りとしてコメント欄に書いていただけたら嬉しいです。じゃあまた第2部でもお会いしましょう。So, thank you for this chapter and I'll see you on the second part. ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
ジャンクなセックスはもういらない。もっと深く美しくセックスも人生も深めていきたい人、ぜひともメルマガに登録してください。そっちで会いましょう。Love you.